He was a surgeon who saved lives with his hands. She was a waitress who poured wine for a living. He thought he knew exactly who had the power in that room. He was wrong. Dead wrong. And in less than 3 seconds, his entire world would shatter. Not from a scalpel, not from a courtroom, not from a scandal, but from a single palm strike delivered by a woman he never saw coming. This is the true story of the night one man's arrogance met its match, and how a moment of violence became a masterclass in consequences. Let me tell you about Dr. Barrett Coington. If you lived in the city, you knew his name. You'd seen it in the society pages, heard it whispered in the hallways of the most prestigious hospital in 3 states. Dr. Barrett Coington, cardiac surgeon, miracle worker, the man with golden hands who'd pulled countless patients back from the edge of death itself. He was brilliant. There's no denying that. Top of his class at Johns Hopkins. Residency at Massachusetts General. By 35, he was performing surgeries that other surgeons wouldn't dare attempt. Hearts that should have stopped beating kept pumping because of him. Families that should have been planning funerals were instead planning celebration dinners. The newspapers loved him. The heart whisperer, they called him. The surgeon who plays God. He had the BMW, the penthouse overlooking the harbor, the vacation home in the Hamptons. He wore watches that cost more than most people's cars. His suits were tailored in Milan. When he walked into a room, heads turned. When he spoke, people listened. But here's the thing about success, about power, about having the world tell you over and over again that you're special. It can do something to a person. It can make you forget that the person serving your coffee is human, that the valet parking your car has a story, that the waitress bringing your wine has a name, a life, dreams that matter just as much as yours. Barrett Coington had forgotten all of this. Or maybe, and this is the scarier thought, he'd never learned it in the first place. It was a Friday night in early autumn, when everything changed. The kind of night where the air has just started to cool, where you can taste the promise of fall on your tongue. The restaurant was called Marons, you know the type. Soft lighting, waiters in crisp black uniforms, wine lists that read like novels, and prices that make you check your bank account twice before ordering. This was where the city's elite came to see and be seen. CEOs. Politicians. Old money families whose names were on hospital wings and university buildings. And doctors. Especially successful doctors like Barrett Coington. He'd arrived at 7:30 with 2 colleagues, both surgeons, both clearly accustomed to being in his orbit. They'd been seated at a prime table near the window, where anyone entering the restaurant would see them, where they could watch the lesser mortals come and go. And that's when Jade appeared. She was in her mid-20s, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing the same crisp black uniform as every other server in the restaurant. Average height, quiet demeanor, the kind of person who could move through a crowded room without drawing attention. She carried herself with a calm efficiency, someone who'd done this job 1,000 times, who knew how to read a table, when to approach, when to disappear. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice polite, professional. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" Coington barely looked at her. He was mid-sentence, telling some story about a surgery, about how he'd saved a patient everyone else had written off. His colleagues were laughing, nodding, playing their parts perfectly. "Wine," he said, cutting off his own story, not even glancing in Jade's direction. "Bring us the 2015 Bordeaux. The Pauillac." "Of course," Jade replied. She scribbled the order on her pad. "I'll have that right out for you." She disappeared into the back. The conversation at the table continued. Coington resumed his story, building to the climax, to the moment where he'd proven everyone wrong, where his genius had shone through. His colleagues ate it up. This was how their world worked. Barrett held court, and they basked in his reflected glory. 10 minutes later, Jade returned with the wine. She showed Coington the bottle, following protocol, waiting for his nod of approval. He waved his hand dismissively, already turning back to his companions. She poured a small amount into his glass for him to taste. This is where things started to go wrong. Coington picked up the glass, swirled it once, brought it to his nose. His expression changed immediately. His eyes narrowed. His jaw tightened. He took a sip, and his face contorted like he'd tasted poison. What is this? His voice cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant like a scalpel. Jade blinked, maintaining her composure. It's the 2015 Powellak you ordered, sir. This is not what I ordered. He set the glass down hard enough that wine sloshed over the rim. This tastes nothing like the Powellak. Are you incompetent, or are you trying to cheat me? The nearby tables had gone quiet. People were starting to stare. Sir, I can absolutely double-check with. I don't need you to check anything, Coington snapped. I need you to bring me what I actually ordered. How hard is that? Do you even know what Powellak is? Or did you just grab whatever bottle was closest and hope I wouldn't notice? Jade's face remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. Just for a second. I'll speak with the sommelier immediately and get this sorted out for you. The sommelier. Coington laughed, but there was no humor in it. So, now we're passing the buck. You can't even own up to your mistake. His colleagues shifted uncomfortably. One of them reached out, touched Coington's arm. Barrett, come on, man. It's not. Coington shook him off. He was locked in now, his attention focused entirely on Jade like she was a tumor he needed to excise. The ego that made him a brilliant surgeon, the absolute certainty that he was right, that he knew better than anyone else in the room, was now aimed at this young woman like a weapon. Do you have any idea who I am? He said, his voice rising. Other diners were openly staring now. Phones were coming out of pockets, being positioned on tables. I perform 20 surgeries a week. Life or death situations. I hold people's hearts in my hands. And you can't even bring me the correct bottle of wine? Sir, I apologize for any confusion. Confusion? He stood up now, his chair scraping back against the hardwood floor. He was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, suddenly looming over her. There's no confusion. You messed up. You're incompetent. You're wasting my time, and honestly, you should be fired for this level of service. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen noise seemed to have stopped. The manager was hurrying over from across the room, but he was too far away, moving too slow. Jade stood her ground. She didn't step back, didn't flinch. She met his eyes with a level gaze that most people in that moment wouldn't have been able to maintain. Sir, she said quietly, I understand you're upset. Let me get the manager, and we can resolve this. But Coington wasn't interested in resolution. He was interested in dominance, in putting this person, this nobody, this waitress, in her place. His face was flushed red. A vein throbbed in his temple. Years of unchecked entitlement, of believing he was untouchable, of having every door open for him and every mistake forgiven, had led him to this moment. You know what? He said. You're pathetic. You're absolutely pathetic. This is probably the best job you'll ever have, and you can't even do it right. And this is where everything truly broke. He drew his foot back. Time seemed to slow down. Everyone watching saw it happening. The phone's recording captured it in perfect, devastating clarity. Dr. Barrett Coington, renowned cardiac surgeon, man of science and healing, drew his foot back and aimed a kick directly at Jade's midsection. It wasn't a light kick. It wasn't a tap. It was meant to hurt, meant to humiliate, meant to show everyone in that restaurant who had power and who didn't. His leg moved through the air. His expensive Italian leather shoe arced toward her body. And Jade moved. Just a little. Just enough. Her hand came up, casual, almost lazy, and caught his ankle mid-strike. His kick stopped dead in the air like it had hit a brick wall. The look on Coington's face in that moment was something no one who witnessed it would ever forget. Confusion. Disbelief. The first cold finger of fear touching his spine. And then Jade moved again. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds for Dr. Barrett Coington's entire world to end. Let me walk you through what happened in those 3 seconds, because everyone who was there, everyone who saw it with their own eyes, everyone who watched the videos later, they all say the same thing. It was like watching a magic trick. One moment, reality was one way. The next moment, everything had changed. Jade's hand was wrapped around Coington's ankle. His kick, that vicious, entitled kick meant to hurt her, to humiliate her, was frozen in midair. His face showed confusion, then the first flicker of real fear as he realized he couldn't pull his leg back. She was holding him there, effortlessly, like his leg weighed nothing. And then she moved. Her other hand came up in a blur of motion. One palm strike. Perfectly placed. Perfectly timed. It connected with his chest, not his face, not his throat, nowhere that would cause permanent damage, but right at the solar plexus, that cluster of nerves right below the sternum. The sound it made echoed through that silent restaurant. A sharp, definitive thwack that seemed to hang in the air. Coington's eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a soundless gasp. And then Jade simply released his ankle and stepped back, one smooth motion, her hands returning to her sides. Dr. Barrett Coington, the man who'd performed surgery on senators, who'd saved the lives of billionaires, who'd spent years believing he was untouchable, dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. He hit the floor hard. Not unconscious, but completely incapacitated. Gasping for air. Clutching his chest. His face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. He tried to speak but couldn't. Tried to breathe, but couldn't quite manage it. The wind had been knocked out of him so completely that for a moment, several people in the restaurant genuinely thought he might be having a heart attack. The irony of that, a cardiac surgeon brought down by his own heart, was not lost on anyone. Jade stood there, calm and composed, not even breathing hard. She looked down at him with an expression that wasn't quite pity, wasn't quite contempt. It was something more like disappointment, like she'd hoped for better from him and wasn't surprised to be let down. Self-defense, she said quietly, to no one in particular. Then she looked around at the crowd of shocked faces, at the dozens of phones still recording. Everyone saw it. He attacked first. And that was it. That was all she said. The manager finally reached them, along with 2 other staff members. Someone was calling 911. Coington's colleagues were kneeling beside him, trying to help him breathe, their faces showing a mixture of shock and something else, something that looked an awful lot like the realization that they'd been standing beside a ticking time bomb all these years and had never noticed. Jade stepped back, letting the staff handle it. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't say another word. She just moved to the side, her professional composure never cracking, and waited for the police to arrive. Because in that moment, everyone in that restaurant understood something fundamental. Jade was no ordinary waitress. The way she'd moved, that block, that strike, it wasn't luck. It wasn't accident. It was training. Years of it. Serious, dedicated, high-level training. The kind of skill you don't pick up from a weekend self-defense class at the local gym. Who was she? The question rippled through the crowd. A former soldier? A martial artist? Someone with a story that had nothing to do with serving wine and clearing plates? No one knew. And Jade wasn't telling. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. The paramedics loaded a still gasping Coington onto a stretcher. He'd managed to start breathing normally again, but his chest hurt. Oh, how it hurt, and his pride was damaged far worse than his body. As they wheeled him out, he locked eyes with Jade one last time. She met his gaze steadily, and whatever he saw there made him look away first. The police took statements. They reviewed the videos, and there were so many videos. At least 15 people had recorded the entire confrontation. Every angle, every word, every moment of Coington's escalating aggression. The attempted kick. The perfect, precise, entirely justified response. Clear case of self-defense, the senior officer said after watching the footage for the 3rd time. He looked at Jade with something like respect. You have every right to press charges against him for assault. Jade considered this for a moment, then shook her head. I just want to go home. The officer nodded slowly. That's your choice, ma'am. But I should tell you, he's a prominent doctor. This is going to get a lot of attention. You might want to. I just want to go home, Jade repeated, her voice quiet but firm. And she did. She gave her statement, provided her contact information, and then she walked out of that restaurant in her black uniform, disappearing into the night like she'd never been there at all. But the story? The story was just beginning. By the time the sun rose the next morning, The video had already been viewed 3 million times. By noon, it was trending on every social media platform: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit threads with thousands of comments, news sites picking it up. Entitled Surgeon Gets Instant Karma, read one headline. Doctor Attacks Waitress, Instantly Regrets It, read another. The video was everywhere. And it was damning. You could hear everything Coington said. Every insult. Every condescending word. The way he'd called her incompetent, pathetic. The way he'd stood over her, using his size to intimidate. And then, clear as day, you could see him draw his foot back and launch that kick. What happened next had been slowed down, replayed, analyzed frame by frame. Martial arts experts weighed in on social media, breaking down Jade's technique. "That's a textbook palm strike," said one former MMA fighter in a video that itself went viral. "Perfect form. Perfect control. She knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't hurt him more than necessary, just enough to stop the threat. That's professional-level training right there." The comment sections were brutal. Thousands upon thousands of people expressing their disgust with Coington, sharing their own stories of being belittled by doctors, by entitled customers, by people who thought their status gave them the right to treat service workers like dirt. "This is every server's fantasy," one comment read, with 50,000 likes. "He really thought he could kick her and face no consequences," read another. "The look on his face when she caught his ankle, priceless. The way she just stood there afterward, calm as can be. Queen," said a third. But it wasn't just social media. By Sunday, the mainstream news had picked it up. CNN ran a segment. The local news stations were camped outside Coington's building and the hospital where he worked. They tracked down people who'd eaten at Marons that night, interviewed witnesses, played the video over and over. They tried to find Jade, of course. They dug up her name from the police report, found her address, showed up at her apartment. But she didn't answer the door. Didn't return calls. Didn't issue a statement. She'd gone to ground, and she was staying there. Coington, meanwhile, couldn't hide. Didn't even try, really. He issued a statement through his lawyer, a carefully worded apology that somehow managed to make things worse. "Dr. Coington regrets the incident at Marchand's restaurant," the statement read. He was under significant stress from a difficult surgery earlier that day and reacted poorly to what he perceived as inadequate service. He has reached out to the server in question to apologize personally. The public reaction was immediate and savage. Perceived as inadequate service? He tried to kick her. Reacted poorly? That's what you call assault now. Notice how he doesn't even use her name. Still can't see her as a real person. The hospital where Coington worked released their own statement 3 days after the incident. "Dr. Coington has been placed on administrative leave while we review the matter." That same week, formal assault charges were filed. Not by Jade, she'd meant what she said about wanting to go home, but by the district attorney's office. The video was too clear. The case too public. They couldn't ignore it. The medical board opened an investigation. Patients started canceling their appointments, requesting different surgeons. Some of them gave interviews, talking about how Coington had always been arrogant, dismissive, how they'd felt uncomfortable but hadn't said anything because he was supposed to be the best. "He treated me like I was stupid for asking questions about my own heart surgery," one former patient told a local news station. "Made me feel like I should be grateful he was even willing to operate on me. After seeing that video, I realized that's who he really is. That's how he sees people he thinks are beneath him." His colleagues began to distance themselves. The 2 surgeons who'd been at dinner with him that night? They released a joint statement condemning his behavior. Hospitals in other cities quietly removed him from their consulting rosters. Medical conferences uninvited him from speaking engagements. It was like watching a controlled demolition. Everything Coington had built, the reputation, the career, the image, it all came down, piece by piece, day by day. 2 weeks after the incident, his medical license was suspended pending the outcome of the criminal case.